Mr. Ron Geesin. And Tom McInnes. So Tom, let me start by asking you briefly first why you came to make the film. You explained how it all happened at the beginning. But Tom, does Ron someone you've known for ages, someone you've admired, or how did it all happen?
Yeah, I've admired Ron for a long time. I've known him for about 35 years.
Right.
Heard about him probably like most people through the Pink Floyd piece, but I saw him perform in Glasgow probably 37, 38 years ago. And then I moved down to Sussex, so we met up then and became friends then. But to pick up the story after the introduction I gave, then we had filmed the concert at Glasgow, and you'll hear from that there was a lot of references to other people he had worked with and that sort of thing. So we thought it would be quite nice to get the other side of that story from somebody like Peter Gabriel or Pete Townsend and that sort of thing, and build it into a bit more of a profile of Ron, because I don't think that really had been done before. So it started like that, and we thought maybe we could ask a few people and we'd get a few more stories, talk about some of the films that he's done, performances he's done. And it really just grew from that. And I thought it was important the story was told, because he's an extraordinary character.
Absolutely.
And I thought we should tell that story. So just went from that, really. And
a fabulous film, fantastic. Ron, let me start off by asking you about your solo work. I remember hearing you first in 1967 when I got an album through the post. It was on the Transatlantic label, and all I knew was it was from a Scotsman who was into the blues. And Transatlantic was, of course, the legendary English folk label at the time, British folk label at the time, with Bert Jansch as their key star. So I thought, blues, Scotland, must be a bit like a Jansch album. So I put it on, and there was mad giggling and cackling, sounds of breaking glass, an order to, if you have bricks in your garden, throw them at your neighbours, and then some fantastic rapid-fire banjo work. It was extraordinary. How on earth did you end up on a legendary folk album label?
Well, I think, the only place that I could put my show over at the time, no, there were two places, but the main place was folk clubs. Because I would do things with the jug, blowing in the jug, and doing, quasi post ragtime and all that. So it kind of just about fitted, and then the humour fitted too, because I couldn't be bothered with the pole-faced, going down the stuff. Really, I mean, I was in as the clown, and that's actually how my performing extrovert stuff started, because I would clown about in school, and I didn't know I was doing it. I would just, the teacher would say, "Geesin, would you explain something?" And and then I'd get a laugh at school. So that's how that developed. The other thing was that I've written, as a little story I've written, is that I was nearly put through a toilet window in the Teddy Boy era in an outskirt of Glasgow by a Teddy Boy in the toilet. And he thought I was a member of a rival gang. And if the clarinet player had not come in and translated, and I only lived 8 miles away from this place, I was finished. I wouldn't be here now. And so I developed the humour bit, partly to draw people out. I still do it, to see where they are, to let them show themselves a bit. And that's how I've done it with audiences. And it's interesting that I've actually, at times in the great days, the sort of mid-70s, what Pete Townsend's talking about, all that period, I could split an audience. You could have half an audience actually wetting themselves, and the other half looking like they were going to commit suicide. You know, and it's to do with going into the subconscious. This is a serious point. It's going into the subconscious, because most of what I've done really is about digging into the subconscious levels of the human, my spirit, as a kind of working mechanism, working experiment. You know, I've obviously refined it a bit now. I don't do it, so I don't need to.
And the folk clubs were, I suppose, a place where you could do some strange and different things in the 60s. They were very divided, weren't they? There was the Ewan McCollite school who told you what songs to sing and even how to dress, and whether Shirley Collins could have varnish on her fingernails, this sort of stuff. And then I suppose there was the whole Billy Connolly, Jerry Rafferty, the Humble Bums, people like that, also playing in the club. So there was a place for you to do your
I think
your
so.
stuff.
And then I got some gigs in cabaret. You know, literally posh cabaret. And sometimes they would go down well, and sometimes they would be a complete disaster because of the brinksmanship thing. I mean, I've had, you know, that kind of adoration thing, and I've also had cakes thrown at me, you know. And of course, the Glasgow Apollo escapade, which was recounted there.
And there were some quite wild shows, weren't there? I mean, when I mentioned to some friends I was going to be talking to you, I suddenly started getting messages from people saying, one said, "Oh yes, I remember him at the Bonzo Dog Doodah farewell, walking around in a white coat, telling the audience they'd just been sprayed with strontium-90."
No.
Not true?
No.
Another one said he broke up a piano at the late Cousins Club. Not true?
What, do what to a piano?
I know, smashed up a piano in late Cousins up the road.
No,
here.
I never smashed a piano up. Some of them deserved to be smashed up. I remember
or playing a vacuum cleaner in Hull, was that
that's
more likely?
Yeah.
How do you play a vacuum cleaner?
You blow down, you make your own embouchure and use the pipe as a resonator. It's the same principle as jug blowing, ancient Afro-American technique. Where are we going on this? Where are we going? Yeah.
But were these ideas you had at the time, were they improvised, or did you know in advance what you were going to do when you were on the stage?
I think the composer. You see, there's two parts to me. There's the introvert composer and the extrovert performer, right? Well, the extrovert performer is fading partly because of the aforementioned arthritis. I can't get round it, you know. But the more one does, the more one can do. It's a philosophy of life. Every time you make a module, it could be 3 notes in a composition, or you make a noise, or you do something, and you get a laugh from an audience. That goes into the bank, and you just increase the bank. The bank loads up. I mean, Tom's makes pictures, makes films, and every time he's made a cut in a film, he's remembered how to do that, and he's remembered about and so you build. So we're all collecting modules to. It's partly, I think, that we build models of ourselves to understand life, and then we die. I mean, it seems it does seem a bit. That's why the term that was not used at all in that film is absurdist, and I think I am an absurdist. I see the point of no point. You see? Do you see that? Yes.
And there seem to be sort of 2 sides to you. There was a composing side, when you sit down and write things, and the doing the noises side of making noises from all sorts of unusual objects.
Yeah, but that's
a good way of putting it?
Yes, that's right. But that's composing too. I mean, I don't discriminate between the positioning blackbird noises or positioning cello noises. They're noises. They're tuned noises, and you put them somewhere in the plane. You put them. You've got to decide when. That's composition.
And the noises can come from anywhere.
Yeah. But I never actually even discriminated between audio things and visual things. I mean, I've composed a restaurant table before. In other words, moving stuff about. It's a piece. You can compose it. You can compose everything. I mean, other people might not like it or think it's the wrong place to do it, but it can be done. You don't get money if you don't get paid for it. Oh, dear me.
And did you regard yourself, did you want to be commercial ever, or did you aim to be commercial?
I don't know what does commercial mean?
Making money.
You know, yeah, well, well, I've done that. I've done enough. You know, I'm still doing things and getting paid for them, but just enough. I think that enough is good. Too much is too much. I've known the big boys. You know, I've known some of the big boys, and I've seen. I don't think it helps them much.
So where did it all start? I mean, the film, you get on a bus with the syncopators and you're off and you're playing amazing ragtime, piano and jazz at the age of 17. You must have been studying presumably for years before that, or playing different things. Where did it come from?
There's something about it's sink or swim. It is about being thrown in the swimming pool. You do because you have to. When I went out on a stage, like witnessed by, say, Peter Gabriel there, it's a challenge. I'm challenging the audience, and they challenge me. And if we get the chemistry right, it's fantastic. And if we don't, I'm off.
But any musical training at school?
No. Well,
None at all?
violin lessons, rudimentary violin lessons. No, it's just done with passion. I mean to make a mark, but partly because it's all I can do. I can't. Well, I'm writing books now. I can do that because I went to a good Scottish school and remembered something. But I believe that you've got to throw your passion into what you do. I had a period, I can't remember when, I think it was in the 1980s, where I got very depressed. It was clinically, bad. And I saw an amazing guru chap for 6 months or so. And after that, I realised, I remember coming home and there was I was beginning to feel bad again, like you do when you're depressed. You feel pretty bloody awful. And I was stirring, Frankie had got me to stir a mixture for a cake or something like that. And I stirred myself into that pot. And as I did that, I realised that that was life. That you're not stirring yourself into a pot, but belonging to what you do. You've got to belong. There's too many people going about being other people, being posers. There's too much of that in this society, and it's all because of the fear of not making money. You make money. You have to make money because we've got a big house or whatever it is.
And what about the jazz, the black American influences? Where did they come from? Where did you first hear ragtime and all these
it's
great guys?
the point of, you see, in my little bedroom at home in middle class Bothwell, which is in Lanarkshire, I was getting frustrated, just held in that middle class life. And Tom knows about this because he was in a similar thing, only he was in Ayrshire, which is the next where I was born. And I heard this, got into jazz music. First of all, jazz music was an eruption. It was a sticking the tongue out at society. But this was trad, which was third generation, second rate jazz music. And you get into that because that's what's about. That's what's on the telly. And then I found out where these boys like Chris Barber and Terry Lightfoot and all these bands, where they were getting it from. So I was into Bessie Smith and King Oliver in a flash. And part of the black music in America was for the same reason, to stick its tongue out at the society, to say, sod you lot, we're having a bit of fun. and that appealed to me. So the banjo represents, to me, still does, represents that sticking the tongue out, because it's not really a musical instrument. It's a kind of a drum that you thrash, and it's making a statement about not. It's another statement I always is I never liked electric guitars, so I thought I'm going to use a banjo and do expression on the banjo instead, as a statement against electric guitars.
But having not like electric guitars, he then went to work on with Pink Floyd.
Yeah, well, but this is the interesting paradoxes, because that's, you know, being an absurdist, I'm into paradoxes.
So how did you actually meet them? You were talking about playing golf with Roger Waters the way one does.
It's all in the book, The Flaming Cow. Wait, I'll send you a copy. I wrote this book, The Flaming Cow, 2-3 years ago, just to set the whole thing in, because Dave he was then, you know, but he came a point where he had to be called David, and he talked a bit posher now than he did then, I tell you.
He's very posh now.
Anyway, that's another story. What was the question?
Floyd, you said you're playing golf with Roger Waters.
Yeah.
Right, as a
someone introduced me to Nick Mason. Or Nick Mason came down to our damp basement flat in whenever it was, 68, 60, late 68. And we got on. You know, he went round in the room and said, "What's that? What's that?" You know, tape things hanging up, you know, gadgets that I'd made to do something with magnetic tape. And we just got on, and then he said, "Well, you've got to meet Roger." So I met Roger and discovered that he was a bit of a golfer, and when they were off, he fancied a game of golf. So of course I was, I say it's an exaggeration, born with the hickory shaft in my hand. And so we went off, played golf. Because that was great for him, because he'd been thrashing away on stages international. That's how it happened.
And so they said, "Come and help us write Atom Heart Mother." What happened exactly?
Yeah, well, that was it. There's two clashing stories here. Sorry, Tom, you get a word in a minute.
Sorry,
he's all right. He's a nice lad. The two clashing stories. David Gilmour has never ever admitted that I composed. He's always talks about arranging. Well, it's not. It's plainly not. I composed on top of their backing tracks. And they left me with a tape. I mean, the rest of it's on the film, is it not? They knew that I would do something. They didn't know. But they were in no state to know, because I've told you, they were knackered, and they truly were.
You had what, the main melodies, or what exactly did you have?
No, it was a backing track. It was chords and drums and a bass line. There was no melody. No melody was ever suggested to me. I wrote the melodies on their chords. It's part of composing by committee.
Could they read music?
No. But then neither could I. Well, I could, obviously.
You can write it.
Yeah, I can write it, but I can't read it. I can't sight read. I cannot sight read. I've never needed to. And it's been a damn good thing, because I can improvise instead. But when I need to write something down, I can write it. But then architects draw buildings. They can't build them. you'll have noticed. You say, what bloody architect built this? Or designed this? Because the builder comes along and says, this is impossible, we'll have to change the design.
So you wrote the melodies on top of their chord structures, basically.
Yeah, that's right. And
And brought in the
yeah,
choirs
the cello,
and the rest of it.
yeah, all that, all the notes.
Right.
I remember the only session with Rick Wright and David Gilmour. They came round. They had half an hour. We might have stretched it to an hour. They came to Ladbroke Grove, and we discussed a couple of how to get in to the choir section. Like maybe Rick Wright played a bit of a bit of a phrase on the one chord, because it was only one chord. That chord just went like that, and that was it. That's all I had. Those were my notes, if you see what I mean. Those were my instructions. In other words, next to bugger all, and I'll get on with it. But look, we don't want to talk about. You see, I've been labelled with this bloody atom heart mother. That's why.
Well, let's move on quickly then to.
That's why it's called, the book is called The Flaming Cow, because it was a fucking nuisance.
Well, the same year though, you wrote Music for the Body with Roger Waters. So
Yeah.
And was that the same idea? You got how do you do that together?
Someone came to me, and they went to John Peel, and they said, "Who's good on the producer of the film, The Body?" Went to John Peel and said, "Who's good hot on music these days, or this year, or this month, or something?" And he said, "Oh, Ron Geesin's all right. He'll do you something." And then they came to me and they said, "Oh, yeah, okay, but do you do songs?" And I said, "Certainly not. I don't do songs." But I said, "I know a man who does." And that was Roger Waters. "Oh, he's always of the Pink Floyd, is it?" "Oh." So that was how we came to do that.
And these are sort of obviously very different atmospheric bits with some noises and some Roger Waters lyrically bits. I mean, when you were doing that, you'd been earlier making commercials, as we saw. How had the whole exercise in making commercials, having instant sort of atmospheric mood pieces very, very briefly constructed, how did that help you with that?
Yeah. The important thing about commercials is you have to be bang on. And when we started, when I started, whenever it was 66, first commercial, 66, 67, you had to have a 1.5 second silence, and then a tiny bit of silence at the end. So you had to measure. You were in 28 seconds. It was a 30-second commercial. Well, you've got to measure that. And these were in the days before digits. So one has to get the stopwatch out and the slide, not the slide rule, but the calculator, and calculate your timings, and you've got a hit point at 13.9 seconds, not 13.8 or 14, and you've got to hit that. So you work out a way of hitting it. You work the beats out, and you work whether you've got to speed up a bit or slow it down a bit or whatever, and you do it. But I was quite good at maths at the time, so I could
and create
and it's a discipline that it's the very opposite of going wild in a performing situation. You've got the discipline of having to hit, accurate points and make a bit of art at the same time. It's all right. It's just like juggling. You watch the jugglers. They've got plates on sticks and God knows what all. Just you work it out. If you have to, it's sink or swim again.
And create a special mood very instantly as well within a very short time frame.
Yes, great discipline. Just the problem is that a lot of the TV commercials have to be derivative. They have to derive. In the 60s, they were deriving from Fellini and Antonio, the more adventurous filmmakers, seeing how you could bleach out a sequence or something like that.
Tom, having rudely not asked you a question for
That's
ages.
all right.
Talking of the Pink Floyd and the rest of these stars that Ron's worked with, you've got an extraordinary cast list in the film.
Yes.
Lots of people that it's very quite hard to get interviews with, we know. How difficult was it to get that cast list in this case?
Well, it wasn't difficult for me. The arrangement we had with Ron was that he knew these people, so he would make the first approach. And if they said, okay, then I would take over from there. So that was pretty straightforward. Then it was just a matter of arranging to do the interviews and that sort of thing, which was another challenge, but trying to schedule that. But it was pretty straightforward, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it is an amazing list of
Yes, it is. I
of
mean, when we
stars.
started off, I was joking with my son who also worked in the film, and we said, oh, what Ron's worked with so and so and so and so, and we thought, yeah, it'd be great to get them. And we almost joked about the possibility that that would never happen. So, but gradually, just one by one, these people said, yeah, okay. And it just built up, so that it's quite an impressive lineup, I agree, at the end.
is.
But that's the tribute to Ron and what these people thought of Ron, because they obviously think a great deal of him. And what surprised me was that when I spoke to them, I was asking them the question, tell me about Ron. How would you describe Ron Geesin to somebody who had never heard of him, who had never met him? And most of them were just completely flummoxed by that. They couldn't think how to describe him at all. So that was quite interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And anyone you wanted to get, you didn't get?
There were a few. But I mean, the question reminds me of a conversation I had with Ron a long time ago. We were in his lounge about 35 years ago, and he's playing me some of his 78s. And I was quite into hi-fi and good quality sound and things like that. I said, all that crackle and hiss in the background, does that not bother you? And he looked at me as if this was a crazy thing to say, and he said, oh, do you listen to that? And I thought, that was a pretty good answer at the time, but of course you think about that as an approach to life, why would you concentrate on the crackle and pop,
Right.
Just concentrate on what you've got.
No, you got some
And
great ones.
that's my view of the film. Don't think about who we didn't get,
Right.
really. There are a few obvious people, but
I mean, you haven't
just
got-
think who we haven't got.
You haven't got Roger Waters. There's no mention of the body, for instance, which was a.
No,
Was that just because it didn't fit in, or?
We didn't get Roger. I mean, I was getting feedback.
He was asked,
Yeah.
but he didn't reply.
Right, right.
However, one thing I would say about Roger is that we needed his blessing to use the music. We needed all sorts of permissions and things like that,
I
and he's
bet.
been very gracious at the end of the day in giving that. So he's quite happy with the film taking
Yeah.
place.
And getting Pete Townsend's very good, obviously. And,
Yes, yeah, he was extraordinary. I thought very, very good, and very straightforward and very intelligent and thoughtful. Obviously, I'd thought about it quite a bit in
Sure.
advance. Very relaxed and chatted for about half an hour afterwards. So he was very good.
So, Ron, how did you meet him? I mean, he was another. You were playing golf with Pete Townsend as well.
We did. Roger and I played something like 4 holes with Pete. One
Really?
down in Richmond, where he lived in Twickenham. And it was a frosty, foggy morning. And Pete got so upset because he hadn't played for ages and that he'd lost his ball. He stormed off into the fog, and we never saw him again. That's the only time we ever played the 3 of us together.
Right.
No, golf is one of the daftest games. I mean, but it is a game of life, and if that equates, then life is daft. So we're all in the right place.
And the tour with the Who. I can imagine. I've seen you playing in small clubs and folk clubs and so forth, but playing a big, well, presumably a big stadium or somewhere large with the
Yeah,
Who
two
must have been
thousand.
quite tricky, wasn't it?
No.
No, because
It's easier than you just go out and hit them. Well, like I said, you go out. You either go out and hit them, or you go out and tease them and cop the results, which can be fatal. One has the choice.
well, the film obviously concentrates mostly on the 70s and ends with Out Apart Mother Again, and so forth. But you have, of course, done masses and masses of other things at the moment. I mean, that Blackbird sequence is terrific. I love that. Blackbirds, are they actually really the more jazzy of all birds? I mean, I'm a big bird fan.
It's only my opinion.
Have you recorded?
No, I mean,
didn't try goldfinches or nightingales or anything. Just
nightingales would work because their phrases are almost infinite. They don't repeat themselves. But chaffinches repeat themselves till
boring.
Very extremely, but do get on your nerves. And so do a lot of other birds. I mean, the robin would work.
quite right.
Quite right too. But the robin would have to be brought down into an easier listening frequency because it's very high. I mean, frequency high.
Yeah. And on top of all this, there's another project at the moment called the Adjustable Spanner. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, very briefly. I've been in my spare time collecting adjustable spanners.
The way one does.
Started with one hanging on my dad's workshop wall, or the garage wall, which was a very peculiar mechanism, a very simple mechanism. You slid a wedge up the shaft and it just gripped, and when you put tension on it, the jaw stayed there. Quite sophisticated. Anyway, I got hold of that in the 60s, I think, in the late 60s. And then when the boot fair phenomenon started in the 80s, I was after old 78s in the boot fairs, but I saw these rusty lumps sticking out of buckets. And as I've said in the book, if you've got 3 or more of anything, you've got to own up and you are a collector.
So how many spanners have you got?
Over 3,000. 3,000 UK and over 1,000 continent.
Right.
And I'm not doing America because they think they know everything and they don't.
And there's a book about spanners.
And I've finished the book and it'll be out in November. And I'm on the last couple of days of the index, which is horrendous. If anyone's into publishing here, but if you do an index well, it's a big job. But I can do it all. I'm doing it. I just got into researching the life and endeavours of numerous not mechanics, but technicians, engineers in Britain, because it's a history of UK, and the book, in fact, is a microcosm of side chain endeavours through the whole of the Industrial Revolution, and it's fascinating. The lives of the people,
Any music to go with it?
Oh no, nothing to do with music, but it is to do with structure. It's to do with design and shapes, and does that work? Does that not work?
Great.
So I've done that, and then I'll be back in the studio by the end of this year. I'll get back in and make something else.
Excellent. Talking about designs and shapes, I've been told we're over time. So, Ron Geesin, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.